Hello and welcome to 24 Panels Per Second, the TV and movie podcast for the Comic Crush. I am your host, Paul. This week we're going to be talking about The Punisher: One Last Kill, which is the Marvel Television special presentation, which I'm sure a lot, if not all of you, have seen already. We've certainly seen it. You know, guys, sometimes you have to make choices in life. You have to choose between some very tough roads, Marvel or DC, courage or, whatever the opposite of courage is. And then sometimes you have to choose between life and Elizabeth. And we've chosen Elizabeth.
Hello.
Liz, how you doing?
I'm here. I'm good,
I just thought I would give you an intro that's suitable for your gothic demeanor.
Thank you. Thoughtful.
Hope you're doing well this week, Liz. I hope you've recovered from the intense hour of television. Why are you so tall at the moment?
Well, it's because I know you look like all little, It's because I got a new chair. I got a new office chair, and it's taller than the other one. It's stuck at a certain height, so I can't actually lower it. So
yeah, it's stuck. Right. Okay.
That was the caveat. I got it. It was like it was free, but you can't adjust the height. So
mine cannot go up any higher, unfortunately. And I'm pretty sure the desk I have from IKEA is like the kiddies, is like two kiddies' desks put together because it was the only one I could find with a shelf on it. So I will be playing Gimli the Dwarf this evening. Now, Punisher: One Last Kill, which is Marvel Television's special presentation. It's the third one of these we've had. They're not really connected by any kind of cohesive strategy. I think they're almost like gap filler issues, aren't they? They're like one shots.
They are, yeah. I mean, and I think you actually exaggerated the length of this episode. It was not an hour. It was
it's like
45 minutes.
Yeah,
between 45 to 50 minutes. I can't remember exactly
which is
the running time, but
yeah, something we'll get into as we go. I mean, I didn't know what to expect with this, really. Even seeing the trailer, which was kind of almost quite elliptical and non-committal, I would say, as to what it was going to be. Quite surprisingly, it actually turned out to be a very, story-wise, it wasn't complex, but I think emotionally quite complex. How did you find it?
Yeah, I think there were, I mean, on the one hand, it was very much what I expected it to be, which is, the action that I would expect from a Punisher special. And I had a sort of a journey with the emotional storyline.
Right.
Because I have to say, on the first pass, I felt one way about it, and on the second pass, I felt another way about it.
Okay, we'll get into that actually, because I just watched it once on sort of day of release. So I watched it on Wednesday. I didn't have a chance or time to go back to it, unfortunately. But I'm not sure I felt I needed that. But perhaps you can enlighten me as to why I might have. Because at the beginning we find Frank in a very, very kind of dark place, which is he seems to be in the midst of a fully blown PTSD episode, and not only hearing voices but seeing people that aren't there, and we see I actually forgot that the guy that appears to him most predominantly, Curtis, was from like season 1 or 2 of The Punisher. He was from
He's
one
like
of the,
a key character throughout
yeah.
both seasons, I believe.
It's been so long since I've watched those though, so
me too, to be honest. But he, was like, he played an important role, which was why I thought it was cool to see him again, because the other Marines that you see were actually like they're real life Marines, like who I think were brought on for like to consult.
Oh wow, okay.
And they ended up playing those small parts, kind of appearing to Frank. And Curtis, Curtis was like a friend to Frank in the 2 seasons of the series. He kind of helped pull him out of his PTSD. He brought him to meetings. He ended up kind of getting a little more involved than he wanted to be in Frank's business, but he was like a genuinely good guy who was there to try and help Frank.
Yeah, like I genuinely didn't remember him, but I think it's been like the last time I watched the Punisher seasons was when they were released, which was like 2017, 2018, something like that.
Thereabouts, yeah. So that, I mean, and like funnily enough, like just that distance from the the series of the show, the 2 seasons that we got, is something that I think played into how I ended up feeling about it.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to, like, as we go on, you want to?
Well, why don't we get there?
Yeah. Okay. So we see Frank in this very kind of he's in a bad way. He's having a lot of trouble telling real from unreal. He seems to be heading for a massive kind of episode or psychotic break, or perhaps has already had one, and he's kind of just in the throes of it now. And he's hiding out in New York in an apartment complex, where people seem to know who he, quite a few people seem to know who he is, but no one is kind of saying, like, we hear that there's a kind of small child who lives across the hall from him with his mother say, oh, that's him. And I kind of get the sense that people in that apartment complex knew who he was and were right. I mean, I don't know.
You could infer that. You could infer that, or you could infer like, oh, they just think he's like the, kind of weird, scary guy who never comes out, and oh, look, he does exist. So you could kind of read it one way or the other.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about the context that he's living in, and that the show finds itself in, which is Little Italy.
Although they call it like Little Sicily.
Yeah, Little Sicily.
It's a made-up neighborhood that's based on Little Italy.
That was once run by the Nucci family. Now, I can't remember if, again, in the 2 seasons we saw him take out the Nuccis, or if that's something that's kind of happened off screen. But the loss of the Nucci family has created this sort of power vacuum, as we kind of told quite a few times in sort of off camera news reports and things like that. And it means that the streets have turned into a bit of a war zone, as demonstrated at the beginning of the show with the sort of young thugs who, like, I mean, on one hand, it almost feels like a parody. They're so evil they murdered the little dog. But on the other, it's just like, yeah, they're complete pieces of shit. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a bit John Wick, which of course is something that ends up you could say that for the entire thing. Yeah. And it's a bit. I felt that aspect of it was like a bit, it leaned into the kind of comicsy nature, of like, oh my god, it's like, as you say, it's an exaggerated version of, how horrible a neighborhood like that can get.
And it does feel like a moment that's right out of Welcome Back, Frank, which is kind of very loosely based on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, without the humor. I mean, I think this is playing it a lot straighter than Welcome Back, Frank did. But you have some of the key elements like the Nucci family, and and Frank, sort of like trying to just like live off the grid in this apartment building, and his neighbors, sort of becoming a little more involved.
Yeah, and I mean, there is very much a sense of him being end of mission here. Like he's done, he sort of has fulfilled his kind of purpose and got revenge, and he's taken down the Nucci's. And what we're seeing is the aftermath of that. And I wonder if that kind of took place between, I assume that took place in between the end of Born Again season 1 and now.
Yes, that is when it's meant to take place.
Yeah. And it doesn't really play into the rest of what's going on in New York, which I thought would have had some kind of play into this, but doesn't. And I don't know if that's like kind of for budgetary reasons or just scheduling and things like that.
Well, I think that even though it does take place between those two time periods, this is very much meant to just exist on its own. There's no need to say like, well, where's Spider-Man? Why isn't he helping out? What's up with you, Daredevil? Don't you care? I think it's just, for anybody who watches it, 10 years from now or what have you, they don't need to know what the context of that time period was. And, they can just watch it as a Punisher story where he's defending, this little corner of the city.
So we've got the burned out bearded Frank, but so burned out that although he's quite openly, almost quite openly walking, he's wearing his hoodie, he's walking the streets, he is sort of left alone, or people just avoid him, but he's not doing anything about what's going on around him. And that was kind of interesting because he's not being the Punisher. You think he would have stepped up a lot sooner, really. And that's one of the ways you can tell that he's going through a massive episode, which is he's not kind of fulfilling his previous remit. And that, in a sense, is part of the problem, right? I mean, he is a man without a mission.
Right.
He doesn't have focus. He seems to really still feel the need for revenge, even though where do you put that now? Because it's alluded that he gets the people that killed his family, and that's done. Although I don't know, did that take place in one of the seasons of
what I thought, and what I, was basically, he's had his revenge. He's killed everyone he thinks was involved in the deaths of his family, and doesn't know what to do next. Basically, he has no mission. He's completed his mission, and now he's just, wading through, existence with, no purpose. And, that's what, has put him in this existential crisis and led him to basically be apathetic and suicidal.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting sort of sequence where he kind of goes out into the streets, and we also get introduced to Charlie, who is not Charlie. Sorry, Charlie is the little girl, right?
Right.
But her dad is played by, and I was so happy to see him, Bubbles, Andre Royo from The Wire. He's a terrific actor. I don't think you see enough, or I'm just not seeing enough of his roles. I'm just not as clued in as I used to be on that, and I'm not seeing enough of his roles. But he's a fantastic. Do you know he once got a shout out from across the street, apparently from Obama?
No way. Did he call him Bubbles?
Yeah. She said that, yo, apparently it was something along the lines of Yo Bubbles, Andre Royal.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, his performance, this was the frustrating thing about this for me, was that there wasn't enough of the background color. And I guess it was done because Frank is very much, he's part of that neighborhood, but he's not. He's not really of it. He kind of reminded me of, have you ever seen The Thing?
Yeah.
With Kurt Russell, right? So he kind of reminded me of Kurt Russell's character in The Thing, where he's part of the group, but he's not. He's got his own little space. He's kind of off, secluded, and he's kind of really nuts, and no one really disturbs him, but they all know he's crazy. And we also see kind of that great thing with Andre Royal's character. He's basically just trying to hold down his business, but also while everything is exploding around him, which is perfectly illustrated by that utterly crazy guy that walks in with a bat. And he's just like, you wait there, I'm going to get to you. He's trying to keep this guy calm, trying to make sure his kid doesn't see it. Like that is the guy who's really in the pressure cooker for me. I mean, regardless of what Frank's going through.
Right, sure.
And again, another person who I think clearly knows that Frank is the Punisher. And
well, the little girl definitely does, because like they're watching, the TV's on up in the corner, and like, it's like pictures of Frank, and like, she's like looking at him, looking at Frank, looking at, and so it's quite evident that she knows who he is.
I love the way they made him look in this as well, with the really big beard and the kind of cut back hair. Like I really like that look. I think he looked fantastic in this, and really kind of sold on the ragged edge. I mean, for me, a lot of this really reminded me of, growing up in the 80s, there was a sort of subgenre of action film that was really rife, and that was the Vietnam vet cop, on the streets, pushed to the edge. And you saw it in, most, like, the biggest kind of proponent of it would have been, Lethal Weapon and things like that. As you get into the 90s, you can't really make those anymore, partly because all the people that would have been in Vietnam start to get too old to still be running around as cops, and partly because it sort of became very passé to do, and it became, what's the word I'm looking for? It became, easily satirized and things like that. But I still take a lot of enjoyment from watching those.
Sure.
Because always you're dealing with bullies in those films. You're dealing with criminals. You're dealing with bad guys, and there is nothing more satisfying than seeing a bully get bullied.
Right. Which I think they do set up well here. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see Frank really at the freaking, the very bottom
point. Yeah.
Yeah. So he packs away his guns and heads to his children and wife's graves, and is literally calling out to his daughter to come and speak to him. So what we have to assume from that, I guess, is that he's hearing voices all the time, and that's been going on for quite a while, and that he's manifesting these.
Yeah, we see that with his wife. We see that with his 2 kids. We see that with Karen Page. Appears to him.
That speaking of the Vietnam thing, because I know obviously in this he's not a Vietnam vet, he's a kind of vet. I think it's the Gulf War he's supposed to have been in, right? Or Afghanistan. And so that really reminded me of, did you ever read Punisher Born?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that has the really sinister thing running throughout, where every now and then he hears a voice. There's something. There's a sort of unphysically represented voice talking to him out of the sort of ether. And at the very end, when he gets home and he's being greeted by his wife and kids, the voice says to him, "You know what I'm going to take next, don't you, Frank?" And it's just like, oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, that's
and that sort of, you realize it's kind of the voice of death is getting to him. And sorry, I'm babbling away. What's interesting for me for that is, and I'm not being dismissive of people who have psychotic problems, who have psychosis, or are going through massive mental health problems, but when you see it in something like this, it adds a kind of quasi supernatural element that actually kind of takes it closer to the rest of the Marvel universe, where we have ghosts, where we have magic and wizards and weird shit happening. It kind of feels like an edge almost in that direction. And the thing is, you know, where is that stuff coming from for Frank? Obviously, it's got a quantifiable origin, but it does edge it in that sort of direction. And I just kind of thought that was interesting as a sort of, not thought experiment, but as a way to kind of approach it.
All right. That didn't like occur to me, but you know, it's like an interesting take on it.
I mean, it's a take. I don't think I can really carry it through to a conclusion. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think it's there. What I'm saying is, it's just a way to consider those moments. But yeah, sorry, you go on.
Okay. So we've kind of like, we've had this build up throughout the opening of the, it's not really an episode, is it? It's a special.
Yeah.
We've gotten to this point where Frank is basically ready to, he's there, he's accomplished his mission, he's kind of communicating with the dead, and he's, ready to go be with them. He brought a gun with him. He brought little trinkets. You can see the graves are covered with trinkets that, he's laid on their graves, that are, you see are kind of comprised of mostly, like kind of totems from the people who took their lives. You see on the side of his daughter's grave, there's like a switchblade. You see in front of his wife's grave, there's like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it had the name of like, kind of a, one of the places that like was connected to their death. And his offerings to them are all basically, the bodies of the people who killed them. And he's now ready to just lie down and be with them, essentially. Like, and he has a whole conversation with his daughter, who the actress is John Bernthal's actual daughter.
Oh God, that must have been weird. That must have been odd.
Well, I mean, I don't think you actually see them on screen together much, though. Like, I think a lot of it is Frank just kind of talking to, people who aren't there.
Well, that is
seeing their visage.
There is that horrible sequence where he goes through these sort of nice memories with his wife, his son, his daughter, and then they all begin to sort of bleed out as if they've been shot or stabbed.
Right, and they all sort of turn on him as well. Like, they all sort of like, then.
Yeah.
And it's
they're not. Yeah, it's there is a sense that I think he feels that they might feel that he somehow brought this on them. Like, Again, I can't remember what the background is of the MCU version of how and why his family get killed. I wish I'd kind of had time to sort of refresh myself on that, but there was only a week between this and the last podcast we did, so unfortunately I didn't have. And I don't know if you remember what the background is. Do you know?
I mean, the very specifics. The very specifics. It's I'd have to rewatch it, but it's it's not a far it's a version of the story that we already know.
Yeah.
But they don't they don't do a play-by-play. They just show you enough that if you were someone who never watched the series, you'd get the idea. His family were killed. He blames himself, and he can't find peace even after killing all those responsible.
There is a lot of that, which I think long-term watchers of Marvel TV and film stuff might find frustrating. There's a lot of kind of recapping.
So I found that frustrating. So this is kind of, on my first pass of watching this, up to this point in the episode, I was a little impatient to get where we were going, because I did feel like, all right, I've seen this before. I know this story. You already showed me this story over the course of, 2 seasons of Daredevil and 2 seasons of The Punisher. So I know that he's tortured. I know that, his family were killed. I know that he blames himself. Let's get on with it. That's, that this was my first viewing of it. And I was kind of like, I was, I had some mild frustration because I felt like, well, this is like limited run time. I want to watch, something I haven't seen.
Yeah.
On my second viewing, I kind of really understood why, because there are going to be tons of people who haven't watched the show.
Yeah. And
there's going to be tons of people who have watched it, like you and me, but we watched it so long ago that some of the details are a little fuzzy, and, there are things that maybe need to be reiterated, So I don't know. I don't know if it's, for people who are really familiar with his backstory, is it going to feel like a little bit, I don't know, not dumbed down, but redundant? Maybe. But I also can appreciate that there is a story that's unfolding that I haven't seen. It's okay. Even though this is something I've seen, with Frank before, I've seen him, have these same character beats. It's for a different reason here. It's because he's essentially completed his mission and doesn't know what to do with himself now. Basically he's been so driven by revenge up to this point that now that he doesn't have that, that's when he's falling apart.
Yeah.
Because he can't keep satisfying that, that urge, because he feels like he's already punished everyone who, were directly responsible for his loss. Yeah. And he, up until this point hasn't really been able to, step up to, sort of feel like a hero, feel like somebody who should go out and, keep the streets safe. That's he doesn't identify as that yet.
And so one of the theories that sort of come out, the fan theories that's come out from this, is that, I mean, first of all, the title Punisher One Last Kill is misleading.
Oh, it's very misleading.
Yeah, because the general consensus, I think I saw a great meme where someone had gone over the title, the subtitle One Last Kill, graffiti style, and just written 1 billion more kills.
Believe it or not, I think it was, I read an article or something that somebody did count how many people he killed in this special, and it was exactly 100.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's
Mhm.
really interesting. Now, I have see. I think One Last Kill could refer to Marnucci.
Well, he hasn't killed her. I mean, at
No,
the end of
but
so.
I actually think that the title "One Last Kill" refers to Frank. I think that's what that ultimately is the end for him. And
Okay,
I
you'll have to explain.
think, well, I think that would be his last kill, wouldn't it? Would be to kill himself.
Oh
And
well,
I
yeah.
think
I
that
mean, but he doesn't
ultimately
get
is
there in this episode. He
no, but that's where he's going to start the episode. That's the beginning.
okay.
And I think that was his intent. Obviously, was his intention. And I think that thing where he's kind of seeing where he says about his daughter, are you there, baby girl? Where he's at the grave, is partly because he wants her to come and say to him, "Don't no, don't do this," But also partly because he wants to kind of see her one last time. I don't think Frank, even though Frank is, and what's kind of one of the kind of interesting things is especially when he goes after mafia figures, is you have to remember that Frank is an Italian American.
Sure.
Yeah, his name isn't Castle. It's
Castiglione,
Castiglione. Yeah. And he would have grown up, and in fact, we know canonically, at least in the modern canon, he did kind of. Didn't he kill someone at the behest of the mob because they suggested that this person was like a sex offender or a rapist or something? Like
that sounds about right.
I think that's the Tiger, isn't it? Punisher the Tiger, the one shot story they did, or mini series. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so and that was another thing. I felt a little bit robbed, and that we they were going to do the new cheese, but not have you actually spend any time with those characters. It was very that said, I thought that Judith Light was a great Manucci.
Yeah. And also when she comes to him at the the apartment complex, where she says, "Oh, can you help me, Frank?" I thought that what she was going to do is say to him, "Look, can you go back in and sort of just take control of the neighborhood for me, and we'll kind of call it a truce." But she doesn't. She thinks of is something a lot.
I know that didn't occur to me. I was like, no, man.
It's also when you think about what's going on around her, it's the dumbest fucking thing she could possibly do. It's like, you stupid. Like, you've already got World War III on the streets, and now you want to. Like,
I don't know. I mean, there were some things about the whole thing that suspended my disbelief a bit. Just the fact that, she would approach him on the street like that.
Well, she's got the huge bodyguard with her, and there are also the guys on the motorcycles, which I think are all with her as well.
Right.
So I think she felt well protected enough. She could at least, very least, slow him down. And also, like, she's had people watching him, right? So because you see that guy near the graveyard who's watching him and sort of reporting back to her. He's like, they can tell that he's not, like, his mind is going. And I can't, but I do love that idea of, I'm just in an hour's time, I'm just going to tell everyone where you are.
Right.
And I think if that was like any other, if that was another Marvel character, they would probably just be like, oh yeah, the best thing to do is for me to leave.
Right.
But of course, he's in the middle of having these psychotic episodes.
Well, and I think also, like, I think he would have known that they would have just invaded that apartment building. And, did he at that point feel some sense of, responsibility to the people in the building?
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I mean, quite quickly, though, I mean, I realised that this was going to be like the bulk of the episode was going to be this whole sequence, and you know, Christ, it was impressive.
I mean, this was like the fun part, where it's like, okay, I felt like the other stuff was maybe sort of something I have seen before, but this was like, him going full Punisher for. I don't know exactly how long the sequence was, but it had to be, at least like, I don't know.
I think it was a good 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And there was a very strange quality about it in that it became, to a certain extent, at least to my mind, Punisher the video game.
Okay.
Because he's literally going level, apartment by apartment, level by level, up instead of down. And then, comes crashing down quite defiantly.
For me, it was like the raid. Like that's what it reminded me of.
And again, there's so much.
And John Wick, there was definitely like some John Wick to it.
Well, I think it didn't have the kind of cartoony flamboyance of John Wick, and I was glad to see that. I'm going to put this out there, and I'm going to get lambasted for this by people, but I think the John Wick films are probably some of the most overrated movies I've seen in the last few years.
I think you have to go with a particular, expectation and attitude.
No, I mean, I think they're really competent action films, and I think the guy that directs them is great. Like, I watched the Fall Guy that he did sort of a bit later on after the John Wick movies, which was fantastic, and I really loved. But yeah, I actually kind of think the John Wick movies are sort of very overrated. Not because of the action, not because there's various reasons which I won't get into now. But I feel that this was actually good, solid, very kind of gritty, bloody action, and I really enjoyed it. Apart from the one moment that everyone seems to have a problem.
I mean, which is like, can you guys just go fix that, please? Like,
I bet they will. I
hope they will.
But apparently
which we should probably, for anyone who hasn't seen this, there's like a VFX moment that is horrendously bad. It looks like a video game.
Well, the problem is apparently that was done for real, so mostly for real. So it is him going off the roof, or it is at the very least a stuntman going off the roof. Not the very least. I mean, stuntmen are incredibly hardworking, risk-taking people. You do deserve more recognition. So apparently, all the way down, it is a person going off the roof. But they went over it with VFX that apparently were never finished. And I don't know at what point it's supposed to change over. And I think there is a definite point where it changes over from the
Well, it's
from
like
the real person.
It's like, he goes off the roof and he hits this like sort of silver bulkhead looking thing.
Yeah.
and it's just, it's very, very noticeable.
But given, I mean, there's a lot of CGI blood in this, which I remember a friend telling me once. He goes, "Oh, like we were talking about a movie. I can't remember which movie it was, but he said, "Oh, I think this is the first film to use like CGI blood." And I was like, "Why would you do that?" And he went, "Well, because when it comes to doing things like the airline versions." Or the TV versions, they can just take it out.
Edit it out, right? That's clever.
So you still get the gunshot and the effect of the gunshot, but you just don't get the blood spray. But I can't ever imagine anyone doing a toned down version of this.
I don't think there's going to be a toned down version of this. I think that's largely impossible.
I wonder if it was done for speed, because in big action scenes, because if you look at that. He is attacked, as you say, by about 100 people, not all at once, but successively, and quite often more than one person at a time. And I'm willing to bet they maybe had a stunt team of about 10 or 12 or maybe 15 people, and of course they've got to keep recycling those guys, and it's also one of the reasons why I guess it's not done in, as a lot of the action sequences in Daredevil and things were done in one shot. It's done in a lot of cuts. It's very choppy, but pleasingly so. People always underrate editing and complain that, if you can see it, it's a bad edit. I don't believe that. I've looked at enough films now, and I think if you can, editing is the real art of film, and it's the one thing that's exclusive to film, that was only ever made for film. Like all the other parts of a film all come from other art films, right? So music and orchestras and all that, and set design comes from the stage. Photography obviously comes out of still photography. Every other part of filmmaking is another art that's been adjusted for film. But editing is the only thing that film created for itself, really. And it I like cuts. I like editing. I like the adjustment of the camera and the movement and all that. And, it's incredibly impactful. And it's just, it's a staggeringly violent sequence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, but, it is, could you ask for, for a more, sort of gloriously bloody Punisher sequence?
Yeah. And we have to remember, this is a scene that starts with him being set on fire. With him being set on fire. And he apparently did allow them to set him on fire.
Right. Yeah.
Which, I'm not sure I'd have the balls to do that. I don't know if you've ever been around.
Apparently he's very into doing, a lot of his own stunts. And, so I for a moment, I thought that he was possibly still, hallucinating. When that fire came under the door and like went up his legs, I was like, is he having another episode? But no, that was actually, what they used to try and get him at first.
Also, I think one of the things in kind of psychosis or psychotic episodes is you don't really have a sense of time. And it's also one of the things that I believe, I might be mistaken, and obviously if there's anyone out there who knows more about this, please write us a comment or a message on the socials and let us know. I believe one of the kind of markers of schizophrenia is that you cannot tell how much time has elapsed and what's happening now and what's happening then and what might not be happening. So it's like one of the markers of schizophrenia is this loss of being able to kind of correctly
which doesn't really apply to Fred. Yeah.
No, but I think it does. Like I think
I don't think he's schizophrenic.
No, not schizophrenic, but I think there's definitely something there where he can't, because we can tell he can't tell what's really happening.
He's got severe PTSD, and he's
But you see the thing with Karen, and he even asks her, "Are you there? Are you really here?" And she says yes, but of course she isn't.
Right. And she says, "I'm always here." So really, we know that he's hallucinating.
Yeah, but I think that's why he doesn't get out of the building, because
partly, it's hard to say exactly what his reason for staying there is. Does he want, he doesn't want to die, like when it actually, when it comes down to it, he fights back, and
absolutely. And but I think it's in thinking about, when Curtis appears to him, he tells him, "You don't have purpose anymore. You haven't got a purpose. What's your purpose, Marine? What's your purpose?" And I think partly is purpose, but also, and this is a key for the Punisher especially in the modern context, sort of Ennis and post-Ennis, for me, is that Frank needs violence.
Right.
He needs violence. It isn't about necessary purpose. I think his only real outlet ultimately is violence in violence in pursuit of justice as he perceives it.
Right. And I think this, I think that what this special is meant, the aim of it is, on one level meant to do is to give him that purpose, to give him, rather than, strictly revenge, to give him, what you said, violence as an outlet, for the purposes of justice, so he goes beyond, simply wanting, to avenge his family.
Absolutely.
To actually, he wants to, take down those who would do, do harm, do evil.
Yeah. And I think as bad as it all is, sort of up in the apartment complex, once he gets down on the ground, it's much, much worse. Like, it actually gets so horribly worse. It's unreal. Because obviously Marnucci is almost kind of taunting him. She's standing there watching these things happen. And it's interesting, with all the violence going on around her, how no one takes her down, even accidentally.
Well, yeah, the neighborhood. I mean, you hear characters say throughout, like, like the Nucci's, at least they kept things, at least they kept the streets clean, they kept a balance, so that they still all respect her, and she still has power in that neighborhood.
But I'm just shocked that there's no friendly fire. Like, no one accidentally clips her. No one accidentally sets fire to that car, or I'm quite surprised.
Well, maybe she's lucky, or maybe they just know better.
But of course, she kind of makes a clean getaway.
Well, he has a choice. He can. Basically, it's.
That's right. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So she has a clean getaway only because it's he could chase after her and probably get her, or he could come to the rescue of Bubbles and his adorable daughter Charlie.
Yeah. Again, like, that is a genuinely horrible sequence that gets worse and worse as it goes on, because he takes care of the guys who are trying to kill Charlie.
Right. One of whom is like this giant guy who he kills with like the pen. That was referenced earlier in the episode. It was like, behind Bubbles' ear. I'm just going to keep calling it Bubbles.
But also once inside the bakery, inside the kind of coffee shop and bakery, it just escalates. And of course you have that horrible thing where the kid is watching, like the kid sees, and the mother is constantly saying, don't look, don't look, don't look. And that was a kind of fascinating thing, because you can't look away, really. As an audience member, you can't look away. I wonder how many people in the audience were also thinking, oh, don't look, don't look, don't look. I'm sure there was one or two moments when I might have kind of, as I've got.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was pretty horrible. Like, when he was like just like hitting the guy with the pen over and over in like the throat and stuff. That was pretty awful. I mean, and some of these deaths were very grisly.
Yeah. As I've gotten older, my taste for that stuff has decreased quite markedly. and I'm always kind of turning away from the TV. But I mean, what you see in Frank is almost kind of beyond. It's beyond anger, and it's beyond the kind of control that I think soldiers have when they are fighting. Because that is one of the things is where you can't really lose control, because that will get you killed very fast. They have to, they're very kind of highly trained guys, and And you know, I've got a lot of respect for the military. I hate war, but I like the military. Does that make sense? I mean,
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's
and I respect that it's there. I think it's sometimes used in ways that it really shouldn't be. But I definitely respect that it's there and the thing that they do. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about this really. It was kind of just. I remember seeing the not the last Rambo film, but the Rambo film before the last one, which I don't know if you've ever watched any of those.
I've seen the original one.
Right.
I don't think I've seen the sequels.
So, but the Rambo 4 was the most incredibly violent film I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
And to the, yeah, I mean, and you've almost kind of got to watch it to appreciate just the staggering, not art, but I don't know, cynicism of it almost, but also how staggeringly staged it was. And I remember sitting at home watching that because I only saw it on like DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. And I sat there going, oh my God, no, like just screaming at the TV when I sat and watched that. And this kind of brought, although this was nowhere near as excessive and cynical as that was, I still I had flashbacks to that.
Sure.
But
I think the for me, like the action sequence was, was exactly, exactly right, for what I expected from the special. I thought, wow, this is, really just well done, satisfying because, I mean, these people were so horrible as was set up by like, the, killing of a little dog and, other gratuitous violence at the beginning. And, I felt like it got all of that stuff right for me. And it took me 2 watches to kind of, I think, like appreciate the, the setup part,
right,
the existential crisis part. And of course at the end, we get him back in the skull. We get him back in full Punisher regalia. We get him accepting a little totem from this little girl who, she had made this little flower we saw her making, earlier in the episode, and then and she gives it to Frank, and he brings that, to his family as like an offering, which is a different offering than like, basically all these tokens of death. If this was a token of, appreciation,
yeah,
and thanks.
It's always interesting with Frank because he's not exactly, choose life, is he?
No, but I think what we're meant to take from that is like, the little girl is obviously, someone he identifies, as a daughter figure in a way, like, and he sees that, there are these people like her that, he can still fight for justice for and still save, and that he does have a purpose. And then he brutally kills the guy who murdered the little dog. So everything's okay.
Only after he finds out he murdered the dog.
Right. Well, yeah, because he was gonna let him go. He just like he just gave the former Marine his hat back, and then the guy tells him like, oh yeah, that's you're not done yet.
It's interesting because in the moment, as I was watching that scene, and he's got the guy pinged up against the lamppost, and he's got the knife, and the older guy, the ex-soldier, shouts out to him, "That cover is mine." I thought he meant, I want to kill him. Like I genuinely thought that's what he meant. I thought it was like a marine term. Cover was a marine term for, target. But of course he meant the hat, which was almost a relief, but not for long. But actually, that is
a perfect ending.
Of all the people you see
in the whole thing, he's like the worst.
Yeah, one of the worst. Well, and also you have to remember that the little kid across the hall was about to watch his mother get raped. So yeah, I think those guys probably were asking for it.
No, definitely. I mean, really, nobody,
nobody gets away clean.
Didn't have it coming, but this guy, was, killing cute little dogs is, as bad as it gets.
And I think that like the kind of Punisher is a conflicting and confronting character, because he is an instrument of our sort of very dark desire for instantaneous karma.
Vengeance,
karma,
karma, vengeance. You get what's coming to you.
Depending on your level of crime, and I think that it's interesting even how looking at Ennis's approach to the Punisher changed between Welcome Back Frank and the series that came out of that, and then the Punisher Max,
right, which is Marvel Knights Punisher, which leans into some I mean, if you read that, I mean, it's one of my all-time favorite Punisher stories. It's fantastic. But it definitely, there's a silliness to it that isn't there in the Max series. The Max series is just very dark.
The Max series was one of the bleakest things I've ever read in my life. Particularly, I always talk about the Slavers being one of the greatest comic runs I've ever read in my life. And in fact, it's the one where, and I'm sorry to bore people with this again, I say it every time, but it's the one where Garth Ennis said that when he did the research for it, he actually wished there was a Punisher. He was just like, it's the one time when I've ever thought, oh yeah, actually no, these people really do deserve what happens, and it's interesting how that plays into that story. I mean, increasingly, as I've said, in the last few years, especially the last year or so, I am trying to face up to my anger and my inner violence and things like that. And because, I feel that my take on things is probably too aggressive. And it comes out of a lot of what's kind of happening now in our society and in as the sort of world seems to want to move right, which I am not. I am not right wing. I am left wing. But in that, I found having to confront a lot of anger, and it's interesting then watching this, which is a very direct route to like, there's the problem. I'll solve it this way. And given that choice, is that something you would do? I don't think so. But at the same time, I think the comfort we find in the Punisher is the same comfort we find in the military and cops and things like that, because there's an idea that we can get some sort of instantaneous justice. But is instantaneous justice the best justice? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure.
If it's some of these people who are just horrendous, then it's like, I quite enjoyed watching him blow you away.
I mean, the general fan consensus I got from reading of quite a few comments online is just let him be the Punisher, for fuck's sake. Let him just be the Punisher. That's what people want. But I think this is almost a casting off of that idea to allow him to move into, like, it's although yes, he started out in Spider-Man, I think it's going to be very weird to see him in Brand New Day.
I do and I don't. I think that they'll play it right, and I think that like Bernthal is versatile enough that he will make it work. And you know, I mean, even just from what we saw in the trailer, I was like, okay, that's how you do it. That works, you know.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they play it, but you know, I have a good feeling about it. And I think it will be in sharp contrast to what we see here. I don't think they're going to do any, you know, I think this was maybe done, you know, in part to satisfy that urge of like, you know, really watching him be the Punisher and assure people that they're not going to soften him up too much, even though he is going to be in a movie that they certainly will not have him, you know, doing like going full Punisher.
Yeah.
So I think this, you know, I think that in a lot of ways, this is, you know, it exists to remind people like who've never watched, you know, the original show, like, okay, here's the Punisher in a nutshell. Here's what you need to know. You know, you didn't watch the Netflix stuff, that's fine. You know, and you're worried that he's going to be softened up too much in Spider-Man. Don't worry, you know, we're still going to do this. So I think there's like, you know, a number of reasons that this came out when it did, that it's set when it did, you know, set when it is.
But I mean, it's interesting, you know, comparing this to Ryan Reynolds' comments recently about Deadpool, where he's like, yeah, I think I'm kind of done with Deadpool as a main attraction. He could now pop up in various things and just be like a guest star.
Right. And we'll see. You know, it's like, I think if the right thing, you know, came along, he might change his mind. But I also kind of agree with him. I think, like, you know, Deadpool's had 3 films that were all great. And you know, now he can just show up and be in, like, X-Force or whatever. I mean, I'd watch another 10 Deadpool movies if Ryan Reynolds wanted to do it, but I don't think there needs to be.
Do you feel that as Disney has come in and taking over all this stuff, whilst there isn't a Disneyfication of it, it is kind of an almost an unspoken thing, is like, well, guys, look, wrap these versions of these characters up because they ain't going to be like this going forward. They're going to be.
I agree with that.
We're going to soften it up a bit. I think there might be an element of that, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because I mean, I can't imagine what the Punisher comic was like in the 70s and 80s.
Sure.
Before Ennis comes along and goes, yeah, well okay.
So I think that you know, that's certainly possible, but I don't think so. I think Disney kind of came out swinging and said, like, this is what you can expect. Don't worry, we're you know, we're gonna go there. And everything that they've done since has, you know, continued to cement that. You know, it's like everything we've seen from Deadpool to Daredevil to Punisher. You know, they haven't flinched. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just
we'll just have to see. I mean, neither one of us has any clue.
No, and I'm not complaining. I mean, if this is the last time you get to see Punisher in that sort of action, what a way to go out, you know?
Sure, yeah. But let's hope not. I'd love to see, you know, another series, to be honest. Yeah. But, you know, who knows? Who knows? But I did enjoy this very much. You know, I had my only, you know, big qualm is that I would have liked to see something longer. I think I would have preferred it to be like you know, maybe a feature length thing with more story.
Okay.
I would like to see, you know, maybe the whole story with the Nucci's play out. I would have liked to see them lean a little heavier into like the source material, like you know, the Welcome Back Frank stuff. But for what it is, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I really liked it. I always think they kind of it's weird structurally with the Punisher with a lot of stuff, because I found this in season 2 where they keep wanting to do the Alamo in the middle of the show rather than the end where I feel like it should be. In that, like, do you remember, like in Punisher season 2? I do remember clearly one thing about it is when we did the podcast for it way back. My complaint was, well, you have that whole thing where all the criminals are kind of converging on that police station where he's hiding that sort of witness, the young girl who's like a state's witness or whatever. And that really should be the end. But if they do it right, like halfway through the season. And again, like the whole thing with the apartment building kind of should have been the end. Like you should be building up the action.
Well, no, it was basically the end. I mean, there wasn't much more.
It was like the middle of the that was like the middle act.
Well, but like, I mean, what you had afterwards was only like a short sequence of him defending those specific characters.
Yeah, but I kind of feel that I don't know. I just feel like
for the runtime we had, I felt like it was, it was pretty well structured.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't take away from my enjoyment of it. I felt it was just a structural thing that I noticed, and I kind of like, yeah, okay. But yeah, again, as for you, I would like to pick my story. I would like to pick more characterization. I would like to have seen more Bubbles and more of his family, more context for the group of people around him. I think, although you got it in you did.
I think it was well done.
What you needed.
You did. But I think just for my own, sort of like desire for more Punisher, I would have liked to see a slightly more fully formed, and characterized story, and just because I felt like you had some interesting stuff that you could have done with that, but as you say, it was done well, very sparingly.
Yeah, and I think that's. It was a sparse kind of entertaining, old school, very 80s style, piece of action television. I liked it. But yeah, what's next for us, Liz? I think we've got Brand New Day, right, coming in July.
Brand New Day, I think, is the next thing. I think that's the next thing.
I mean, also, did you know that this year is the 10th anniversary of Civil War?
No way! Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. So I remember seeing that, in one of the preview screenings, and I loved it so much that if they'd let me sit there and watch it again right then, I would have.
Yeah. A film initially I didn't like. But have come to respect a staggering amount with successive watches, and also just looking at a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And
so that means 10 years of Tom Holland in the MCU.
Yeah. So I mean, I wonder if this will be the last thing he does. Like, will Brand New Day be the last?
Oh, I hope not.
I hope not. I really like him. I think I think in his heart he is a very sweet guy, and I think he's actually, despite he apparently doesn't like Los Angeles, doesn't like Hollywood. He said, I only come to Los Angeles now for work, really, and I don't know how much that changes now that he's married to Zendaya and things. But I like that he seems to have actually retained a lot of his innocence. Almost. Yeah,
he really does exude what Spider-Man needs to exude.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he comes across like a very sweet kid.
Yeah.
And I think he has a lot of what Daniel Radcliffe has, actually, which is a genuine kind of he is who he presents himself to be. It's not, he acts, etc., but he is basically who he presents himself to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, but Tom Holland can act.
Yeah, I think that's a bit unfair. I think Daniel Radcliffe has a certain charm to him, and I actually think that the more movie stars can be themselves, the better the movie star they are, really. But yeah, I certainly hope he's going to carry on doing.
I hope so.
Doing Spider-Man, but at the same time, really, 2 or 3 more movies, and I think that should probably be it.
Hey, I'm very, ready to see, because we've got so many different versions of Peter Parker that,
Yeah.
that they could channel, um, more adult versions, Ultimate Universe version. You can, there's all directions you can go.
Well, we do also have that we haven't talked about doing, which is the Spider-Man Noir that's coming up with Nick Cage.
Possibly, yeah. That's
so that would be interesting. And I think also we've got it's actually a busier year than I thought it was. And certainly more opportunities for us to annoy each other, because we've also got Lanterns coming up.
Oh yeah, I do want to talk about that.
August, which I'd quite like to discuss. Not being a huge Green Lantern fan, but
Yeah, but I think this looks really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think that all of those things are things we could potentially, get into as they unfold.
Yeah, folks, why don't you tell us what you'd like to see us discussing there? Good to kind of hear from some of the audience out there. Really appreciate everyone who's sort of tuning in and watching or listening on Apple and Spotify. Also, do check out the Comic Crush website, where there are a ton of reviews and articles, all written by yours truly. And more podcasts featuring my Gothic friend here, and myself arguing over sometimes quite aggressively
anything, really,
over the qualitative nature of comic book film and TV or not. But yeah, do check those out, guys. Some of the archive stuff is fun. We've done all the MCU TV shows. I realised that we've really missed out on doing a lot of DC stuff. And
we'll try. But yeah. Remember that I am in a room that's 85 degrees, and am
Liz
ready
wants
to wrap it up. You're going off on all these tangents, and
All right, but you should give me the signal.
That was the signal.
Right, we're going to let Punisher one Liz kill go. Bye, Liz. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye.
Bye.